The world woke up today to the sound of shifting tectonic plates in the Middle East, and for the first time in decades, the unthinkable isn't just a theory, it's a countdown. As you read this, the global economy is hemorrhaging. Oil has shattered the $116 a barrel mark, sending shockwaves through Tokyo and Seoul, where markets are currently in a free fall that feels less like a correction and more like a collapse. But the real story isn't on the ticker tape, it's in the salt-crusted air of the Persian Gulf and the war rooms of Tehran. Just hours ago, a chilling ultimatum was issued from the floor of the Iranian parliament. Mohammad Balabaf, the speaker, didn't just issue a warning, he described a trap. He accused the United States of playing a double game, whispering about peace and deals in public while moving the pieces for a massive ground offensive in secret. His words were a dark promise. Our men are waiting for American soldiers to enter so they can rain fire upon them. This isn't the rhetoric of 2003. This is a regional power that has spent 20 years preparing for this exact moment, and they are practically daring the United States to cross the shoreline. The curiosity gap here is terrifying. Why? While President Trump speaks of a present from Iran and talks going well, is the Pentagon moving the 82nd Airborne, the most lethal rapid response unit on Earth, into striking distance? Why are thousands of Marines from California currently steaming toward a coastline that is already rigged with explosives? We are standing on the precipice of a conflict that could dwarf the endless wars of the last 2 decades. The jewel in the crown, Kharg Island, is in the crosshairs. If that jewel breaks, the entire global order goes with it. What we are witnessing is the immediate context explosion, the moment where diplomacy ends and the kinetic reality begins. On Sunday, aboard Air Force One, the President of the United States framed the situation with his trademark unpredictability. He spoke of Iran allowing vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz as a gift, but in the same breath, he refused to rule out a blockade or seizure of Kharg Island. To understand why this is explosive, you have to understand the geography of power. Kharg Island is the jugular vein of the Iranian state. It is the terminal through which 90% of their oil flows. To touch Kharg is to attempt a total economic heart attack on the Islamic Republic. But here's the struggle. The Pentagon isn't just planning a blockade. The Washington Post is now confirming that boots on the ground is no longer a worst-case scenario. It is an active operational plan. CENTCOM has confirmed the arrival of the USS Tripoli, packed with 3,000 sailors and Marines. They are joined by a Marine Expeditionary Unit and the legendary 82nd Airborne, which can be anywhere on the planet in 24 hours. The frame is clear. The U.S. is signaling a knockout blow, but the Iranians aren't flinching. They've seen the playbook before. To Tehran, Trump's talk of peace is a smokescreen, a tactical pause to allow his heavy hitters to get into position. The struggle is no longer about nuclear centrifuges. It's about the very soil of the Middle East and whether the U.S. is prepared to pay the blood price for a ground war that every expert warned would be a catastrophe. This didn't happen overnight. The background tension has been building like steam in a sealed pipe. For weeks, the pattern of escalation has followed a predictable yet ignored rhythm. We saw the warnings, the cyber attacks on Iranian infrastructure, the mysterious power blackouts in Tehran and Kharg, and the targeted strikes on steel plants. Each move was a probe, a test of the other side's resolve. The history here is stained with the memory of Iraq and Afghanistan. The American public was promised an end to endless wars, yet the deployment patterns we are seeing today are an exact mirror of the buildups that preceded those conflicts. For months, the rhetoric has shifted from maximum pressure to maximum readiness. The Iranians have spent this time building a forward defense strategy. They aren't just waiting in Tehran, they have activated the axis of resistance. Look at the Houthis in Yemen. After weeks of threats, they have officially entered the war, opening a third front. They aren't just ragtag rebels. They are hitting the southern Israeli port of Eilat with sophisticated drones. They are threatening the Red Sea, a corridor that handles 15% of global trade. This was the buildup, the systematic positioning of Iranian proxies to ensure that if the US strikes the heart, the limbs strike back at the entire world. The pattern is undeniable. Every time a diplomatic off-ramp was offered in Geneva or Islamabad, it was followed by a strike. The trust is at zero. The history is written in fire. Then came the turning point, the moment the abstract became agonizingly real. Overnight, a petrochemical plant in Tabriz was hit. The sky turned a sickly orange as toxic fumes loomed over the population. Almost simultaneously, the Iranians struck back, hitting a chemical factory in Israel's Neat Hovav industrial zone. This is the climax of the escalation ladder. We are no longer talking about hitting military bases in the desert. We are talking about the infrastructure war. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard has declared a new doctrine, equivalent value. If the US or Israel hits an Iranian energy plant, Iran will hit a chemical or power plant in Israel, Kuwait, or the UAE. The pacing of these strikes is frantic. In the Israeli Knesset, the largest budget in the country's history, $270 billion, was passed while lawmakers were literally ducking into bunkers as Iranian missiles screamed overhead. Think about that image. The machinery of state functioning in an underground bunker while the sky falls. This is the rain of fire Balabaf promised. It is no longer a threat. It is a real-time casualty list. One Indian national killed in a Kuwaiti desalination plant. 10 Kuwaiti troops injured. Panic in Dubai as sirens wail over the Burj Khalifa. The turning point was the decision to target the life support systems of modern civilization: water, power, and chemicals. The fallout is a kaleidoscope of chaos. In Washington, the political divide has become a canyon. Democrats are paralyzed by the fear of a ground war that will haunt the next 3 generations, while some Republicans argue that total war is the only way to end the 30-year war with Tehran. But the media fallout is nothing compared to the economic reality. When oil hits 116s, the global south begins to starve. The logistics of the world are grinding to a halt. In Baghdad, the symbolic base camp victory, once the safest place for Americans in Iraq, is being hammered by rockets. The Avengers of Blood, an Iraq-based armed group, is claiming responsibility, while the Iraqi foreign minister desperately tells anyone who will listen that his country is being consumed by a war that is not their own. The shockwaves are reaching the Gulf monarchies. Countries like Qatar and the UAE, which have tried to balance their security with the US and their proximity to Iran, are now seeing their skies filled with interceptions. The debris from these victories is falling on civilian streets, proving that in a missile war, there is no such thing as a safe interception. The global response is one of sheer terror, not just of the bombs, but of the vacuum that follows when the world's energy supply is held hostage by a dozen different militias. As the smoke clears from the latest round of strikes, we have to ask, who is actually gaining? On the surface, it looks like a lose-lose, but in the dark math of geopolitics, power is shifting. Iran is proving that it can paralyze the world without winning a single traditional battle. By closing the Strait of Hormuz and activating the Houthis, they have turned the global economy into a hostage. The winners, if you can call them that, are the hardliners on both sides. In Tehran, the military is now in total control, sidelining the diplomats. In the US, the defense industrial complex has just been handed a $10 billion boost in the Israeli budget alone. But the losers are clear. The American promise of no more boots on the ground. If the 82nd Airborne lands on Kharg Island, the US is no longer a mediator, it is an occupier in a land that has been waiting for this fight since 1979. This is the beginning of something much bigger. We are seeing the death of the unipolar moment. If the US cannot protect its partners in the Gulf from low-cost drones and sinful aggression, the entire security architecture of the last 50 years is dead. The power shift is moving away from carrier groups and toward the paramilitary and the asymmetric. Iran is betting that the US doesn't have the stomach for the body bags that come with a ground war. They are betting that the American mentality will break before the Iranian resolve does. This brings us to the bigger system warning. This isn't just about a strip of water in the Middle East. This is about the integrity of the American system itself. We are watching a president talk about deals while his generals prepare for invasions. This disconnect creates a crisis of institutional trust. If the public feels they are being slow-walked into another Iraq, the domestic fallout could be more violent than the war itself. Our democracy, our markets, and the global order are all tied to the stability of the commons. When the Strait of Hormuz is closed, the global commons is broken. It means that any regional power with enough missiles can now veto global prosperity. This is a warning to every American. The era of cheap energy and distant wars is over. The war is now at the pump, in the 401k, and in the rapid response deployment of your sons and daughters. The institutions designed to prevent this, the UN, the diplomatic channels in Geneva, have failed. Even the baby steps in Islamabad, where Pakistan is trying to host talks, feel like a funeral march. The maximalist demands on both sides, Iran wanting total sovereignty and reparations, the US wanting total nuclear dismantlement, are irreconcilable.
The system is blinking red. As the sun sets over the Persian Gulf tonight, the silence is heavier than the sound of the explosions. Thousands of young men and women on ships and in bunkers are waiting for a single command that could change the map of the world forever. President Trump says he wants a deal. Mohammed Balibaf says he's ready for fire. Somewhere in the middle, the truth is buried under the sand of Kharg Island. This story isn't over. In fact, the most dangerous chapters haven't even been written. We are watching the end of the beginning. Whether this ends in a historic grand bargain or a regional conflagration that burns for a decade depends on what happens in the next 24 hours. The chess pieces are gone. We are now playing with live ammunition. The world is watching. The markets are waiting. And the 82nd Airborne is in the air. This is the reality of power in 2026.
If you want to understand the forces tearing our world apart, you have to look past the headlines and into the fire. Stay vigilant. The world you knew yesterday is already gone.